Welcome to the Good Word. My name is Vincent Goodwill, senior NBA writer for Yahoo Sports. We are part of the Ball Don't Lie Network. Get us wherever you get your podcast. Welcome to 2024. I know it's not a Monday. We didn't do anything on a Monday, which is our usual day. We'll be going on Tuesday and Thursday for just this week. And no guest for today's show. Thursday, we will have a friend of the show pop up today. It is me and producer John. Producer John, Happy New Year. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. I'm tired. Like, you know this. I got a almost 6-year-old child. These holidays are not quite as relaxing as they used to be, but I got in a lot of basketball. New Year's was a delight, and I'm ready to get back into the swing of things.
Yeah, and your wife's birthday was yesterday, which is always a curious thing because you weren't like me yelling at the TV during the Rose Bowl. I swore, like when you jump into the business, y'all, this is for those who like inside baseball, you lose a lot of the fandom. You know how the sausage is made. You lose your childhood teams. Because I don't cover football, though, Michigan football is the one thing I got left, and I swore to y'all. I swore. I just say, you know what? Beat Michigan State because I can't stand the Spartans in my backyard. Beat Ohio State because why not? The playoff was just above my head. And then the Rose Bowl happened yesterday, and I'm literally in a defensive stance, John. Literally in a defensive stance for the entire second half. Like, I cannot believe this. I got sucked in. I feel like the Godfather. Every time I think I'm out, they pull me back in. Like, they pull me back in. I'm yelling at the TV. My TV freezes, John. My TV freezes.
Oh, no.
In overtime.
Oh, no.
After Michigan scores and Alabama has the ball, my TV freezes. I don't know what happened. It froze. I go upstairs. That TV froze. Oh, no. Don't know what in the world is happening. Okay? So, you know what my New Year's resolution is, John? Because I don't do New Year's resolutions. You know what the New Year's resolution is?
Is it anger management? Because I would have broken something.
I didn't break anything. Luckily, I didn't break anything. It was just Zen. Woosah. That's all. It was woosah.
I have a question about that is only slightly off topic.
Okay, all right.
The time in which I was watching a football game recently and being that stressed about it was Saturday night because I am a fan of the Dallas Cowboys. Ooh. And I need to know, like, ear to the ground, boots on the ground in Detroit. Did they just riot? Did they burn the city down in defiance to the end of that game? Because I would have broken something.
Lions fans are perpetually playing the victim card, okay? It is the league hates us. They don't want us to win. And whenever we're playing Dallas, we get screwed. There was a pass interference flag that was picked up, I think, in 2016. Anthony Hitchens maybe interfered with Brandon Pettigrew, if I feel like that sounds correct, in a wild card game at Jerry World. And everybody in Detroit lost their minds. But because I am Lions free, I can watch such things, John, and not feel a thing. I don't have the outright disdain for the Lions that I used to have. Like, I'm actually happy for, a lot of the people over there who have stuck with the franchise, stuck with the team. My dad is trying to wean himself off of the narcotic, but I don't think he can ditch it after 60 years. You know what I mean? But the Lions are definitely in the TV networks don't like us. The NFL hates us. They don't want to see us win, even though the Lions are one of the best stories in the National Football League this year. Never mind any of that. Like, the Lions fans like playing the total victim, and it is hysterical to watch. I'm sorry, it's just hysterical to watch.
It's okay. Now, I honestly think that's like every fan of every team, especially NFL teams, even Cowboys fans, are like, the league is trying to screw us because of the other time, and the league screwed someone else for us. It's no one ever feels like the league, the refs, anything is fair. It's always angled against them in some way.
I will say this. Someone asked me, what would it take to get me back on the Lions, and I said, nothing. I will never come back. Like, you can't take me back to July 27th, 1999 and do that all over again. The day Barry Sanders retired. That was the day my Lions fandom died. But the only way that I would root for the Lions in an actual playoff game is if they played the Cowboys. That's how. That's you could get me to turn off the hate or to turn off the disdain for like 3 hours. You know what I mean? Like 3 hours, just because I can't do it. I can't do it. That's all.
It's fair.
Sorry, John.
It's fair.
So, but the people did not get the people are not here to hear me complain about my former flame, the Detroit Lions. You know, nobody likes to hear about the ex-girlfriend. Thank you, Monica McNutt. Who sent me a very nice text yesterday. John, she sent me a text about our Love Doctor episode and was telling me, you know, basically she was saying, "What you doing ain't working." Yeah, it was just hilarious.
The funny part about the Love Doctor episode is that everyone is going to come on and try and play Love Doctor to the Love Doctor. You know it's coming.
Yeah, and that's why we're going to have the mute button going on for the Love Doctor episode. Okay, so Love Doctor never fails. Never forget that. But we got some NBA basketball to talk about, and before we get to New Year's resolutions for a few notable franchises, of course, we have to address the Knicks-Toronto trade, which basically was the precursor for the Detroit Pistons breaking that terrible losing streak. And they started another losing streak last night, you know, when they lost by 30 to the Rockets. All right. But the Knicks, they get OG Anunoby, Malachi Flynn, Precious Achiuwa. Toronto gets RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickly, and a 2024 second-round pick. This is Tom Thibodeau's dream of all dreams. You want to know why? Because OG Anunoby will play 45 minutes, not say a word, and go and play 45 minutes the very next day. I don't know if OG is a third star for the Knicks. I don't think this elevates them into a better place to deal with Milwaukee, Boston, Philly, should it come down to it. In the micro sense, he's someone you can stick on Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Giannis. You could even stick him on Joel and be like, I've seen him guard much bigger players in that way. So he does add an element of a bigger, stronger, maybe more polished wing defender than RJ Barrett. And I feel like RJ Barrett was always sort of going to be on the outside looking in for a number of reasons with the Knicks, just because that was just what he was going to be. And, you know, if you believe in Julius Randle and if you believe in Jalen Brunson as your two stars, then you at least would need someone who's a good three-point shooter, who's a really good defender and a versatile defender. He fits those bills. The Knicks were not going to come to terms with Emmanuel Quickly on a contract extension. He was going to be up. That made sense. RJ already signed his deal, and you've sent him back home, so it's not necessarily going to be any hard feelings. Next up for Toronto, you got to figure out what you're going to do with Pascal Siakam. Scotty Barnes is going to be up for an extension after this year under the rookie extension, but the Raptors aren't even in the play-in right now. They have to decide if they are going to go full teardown, let's build with Scotty Barnes and go from there. And if you're Pascal Siakam, do you want your freedom more than anything else? Or do you just want to get to a new location? Who knows? We've been talking about Toronto for years, ever since Kawhi Leonard left, as a team that, hey, are you going to start selling off these parts? This is the first significant move of a player of value for that franchise. What you got, John?
My feeling on this trade, you said we'll see what they do with Siakam and see if they go like full teardown. My feeling on this trade, and I guess I don't know the full market, but they jumped on it in December. They could have waited until February. Trade deadline's in February.
Right.
The fact that they jumped on it now, the fact that they didn't even get a first round pick back, they got two young players, one who signed for a while, one who goes into restricted free agency, I think this offseason. That to me signaled they're not ready for a teardown. They're not ready for their 65 loss season.
Right.
They want to remain kind of where they've been, which is good but not great. And by making this move, I feel like it kind of keeps them at good but not great. But now they're younger and maybe cheaper, or at least Barrett is signed longer than, OG was going to hit free agency and probably leave.
Right.
So I think they already answered the question of if they're going to go full teardown. And from my perspective, it seems like their front office is saying, like, we're not prepared to go the route of, I don't know, name a tanking team who's not the Pistons, because no one wants to go through that. But they're not ready to go, all right, we're going to throw it away and get the best draft pick we can possibly get. I think they're just kind of reshuffling the deck and going, like, how long can we stay good? And maybe this is the Raptors' formula. They stay good until they can, add a superstar to it in some way, shape, or form and hope that rides them to a championship again.
I mean, I think the thing you want to do, you want to have talent and you want to have flexibility, especially in a, cap threshold world where you get to the second aprons and it becomes much more punitive, which means you have to be really smart and really flexible with your draft picks, with your draft capital. It also means that they're not in any rush to make any rash decisions, which I think Masai Ujiri, the president of basketball operations, he's never been in a rush to do much of anything. And that might annoy some people, right? Because it keeps them perpetually in this spot of asking the questions. But I think your point is well taken, John. And don't forget, OG Anunoby's agent is Sam Rose. Rose, that sounds familiar. Like, wow, what's his name? Rose. You mean Leon Rose, the guy who will never climb out of his cave in New York City. If you're asking Vinnie, New York City doesn't have caves. Yes, they do, because Leon Rose is stuck there and he will not talk to the media, even though he lives in the number one media market in the world, and won't even come out and take a victory lap, let alone take accountability if something happens. And something negative happens. He hasn't spoken to the media in almost 3 years. He's the president of basketball operations. It is a terrible look for the NBA, a terrible look for the league office. Can't really find them. James Dolan, their owner, doesn't give a shit about anything. So he's not going to make Leon Rose come out and speak to the media. But as a whole, this was a good deal. Maybe not a great deal. This was a good deal for the Knicks. Sam Rose, Leon Rose, that's father and son. So the CAA connection, everybody makes the jokes about the CAA Knicks, but it is real. With that said, I don't do New Year's resolutions. I think if you're going to do something, it's a series of habits. You just go out and do it. But understand some people need the significant changing of a calendar to implement new things. With that, we're going to have some New Year's resolutions for a handful of NBA teams as the calendar goes to 2024. John has a list of teams. And I want to know, John, what team are we starting off with first?
We have a list, and there's a few that you said, I got something for these. And so we're going to hit on those. I'm going to throw you a curveball right out of the gate. You can make it as short as you want, because I know you hate talking about them.
Okay.
Give me one for the Detroit Pistons, please.
Oh, man. Man. That's a tough one. No, look.
Forgive and forget?
Yeah, no, it's not that. It's not that. John, there are two different types of players in terms of how good you are. There are players who drive winning and players who influence winning. If you're driving winning, you're Nikola Jokic, you're Giannis, you're Steph, you're those guys. You're influencing winning. That means you can do a lot of things to nudge your team in that direction, but your own singular force of will is probably not there. Cade influences winning. Even on a 3-30 team, you can tell that he influences winning. And I know there's some other people around who don't think that he does, and I just don't believe that the roster around him is best equipped for him to drive winning. Not his fault. That dude needs space. He's a mid-range master, which means you got to have shooting around him so he can get to his spots. But the organization, to keep it short and sweet, John, even though I just went for a minute, I would want the organization to get on one page. That's it. Get on one page. Either you're riding with Troy Weaver or you're not. And all the other voices in the room, am I taking credit? Am I taking blame? Am I running and hiding? Either handle the business or not. Either choose a direction or not. And clearly, this franchise needs a lot of changes to be made because they have not won a playoff game since May 24th, May 26th, 2008, Game 4 of the Eastern Conference Finals. It is known around these parts as the Antonio McDyess game. That's how long it has been. Okay? So, yes, John, you have given me an unexpected curveball. All right? I'm gonna go back to the Pistons a little later in a different way, but you'll see it. You'll see it when it comes. But give me your real first team.
My real first team, because that was an appetizer. My real first team. Let's do a New Year's resolution for LeBron and the Lakers.
That's an interesting one, John, because I think when you look at LeBron's numbers, right, and you look at AD's numbers, they've played all the games, right? Their numbers look good. LeBron is actually shooting 41% from three. That's the best numbers, I want to say, just off the top of my head. Maybe his second or third year in Miami, where LeBron was really, really smart about his shot selection. You saw the shooting percentage go all the way up. You saw the three-point percentage go up. That was when he was at the absolute peak of his powers on both ends, and he's shooting 41 from three, just in that way. But that team is 25th in offense. I can't understand for the life of me how an available LeBron James and an available Anthony Davis has a bottom 5 offense in the league. Something is wrong with the brew. It cannot be, this is D'Angelo Russell's fault. You know what I mean? This cannot be. Gabe Vincent isn't here. It has to be something else there. And they're a 500 team. Even after winning the in-season tournament, I think they've gone like 3-8 since then. They've gotten waxed by Boston, waxed by New Orleans, a team that probably shouldn't be waxing them, but waxing them. Okay, cool. John, they have, I think, 10 of their next 11 games at home. They better get well really quickly before they go on the road for this Grammys trip. Okay. And everybody's going to look and say, well, what about Zach LaVine going to the Lakers and the clutch situation? We just talked about CA and all that. I don't know if Zach LaVine fixes what ails the Lakers if LeBron and AD are high usage players. And AD has been fabulous this year. LeBron, from a number standpoint, has been really good this year. LeBron wasn't great on Christmas, but LeBron's 39 years old. You can't expect him to be that level of great every night. But, John, here's what they've got the next 10 games. You ready?
Ready.
They got Miami, Memphis, the Clippers, who we're going to get to, Toronto, the Phoenix Suns, all those games at home. Utah on the road, then OKC, Dallas, Brooklyn, and then Portland. Some winnable games in there, but also some scary games in there. And if they don't get themselves right, and all that happens before January 21st, and then they play the Clippers again, which will technically be a road game, but we know it'll be in Crypto.com Arena. If they don't get themselves right, I don't think there's any trade that they can make. There won't be any trade where we can trade Russell Westbrook, get a bunch of things back, have LeBron go sit on the shelf for a couple weeks, and then we make this magical run. That magical run was last year. If they're going to fix it, they're going to fix it right now. And I have it very hard to believe that a team with LeBron James is 24th in offense. Something is wrong there.
I will just tack onto that and say, with the trade deadline being in early February, a Lakers slide against those teams, especially at home, will let LeBron do the thing that LeBron loves to do, which is play GM. I love when LeBron plays GM, when he's sitting in the locker room telling the front office what this team needs and what this team needs to do. I think that's coming up. You ready to jump to the next team?
No. Because I'm going to give, you're right. You're absolutely right. Here's the other part of that, though. They could win the next 10 games, and if LeBron doesn't see fit that these things are working, he'll do the exact same thing. And he won't do it in the locker room. He'll do it on the podium.
Yeah, exactly.
So who's next?
The Chicago Bulls, who you just mentioned, kind of via Zach LaVine.
Now, the Bulls are a team I used to cover in Chicago. There's a lot of friends I have there. Got a friend of the show, Jason Goff. Another guy who semi likes me, Kendall Gill. But there's reasons to be positive. Even though Zach LaVine is hurting, there's the whole trade thing swirling over him. Kobe White has been excellent, y'all. Excellent over the last 20 games. 22, 5 and 5, shooting 48 from the field, 43 from 3. He's not a point guard, but he is looking the part right now. He looks comfortable. And that is something I don't think we've ever really seen. I thought he was always a guy to come off the bench. He was going to be a Ben Gordon, a Vinnie Johnson type of player. Now he looks like someone who can engineer an offense. And then there was the good news that Lonzo Ball is pain-free in his knee. He's back to running. Remember the whole Stephen A. Smith, Lonzo Ball thing where he was saying Lonzo Ball could barely walk, and then Lonzo got up in a chair in front of a pool and said, "Look at me, I can stand. I'm a real boy." You know, all that type of stuff. Remember all that? Okay, things are turning. He's still going to miss the season, okay? He's not coming back this year. He has a player option next year for $21 million, the last of his deal. We're sure he's going to pick that up. And there's light at the end of the tunnel. There is this Zach LaVine thing. Zach, I think they sent Zach down to the Windy City Bulls to start, rehab, the next version of his rehab. They did not bring him. I believe they're going to Milwaukee, if I'm not mistaken. So there's light at the end of the tunnel when they literally looked like a team that was stuck in mud, refusing to choose a direction. And now they have more than a little light. Patrick Williams is starting to wake up a little bit. DeMar DeRozan has adjusted to the way that they're playing. They're still under 500. They still got a ways to go before you can say that the franchise is stable. And who knows what happens with Zach LaVine? Maybe Zach gets back on, or maybe not. Maybe you can get something for him and you can make a trade that's more advantageous to you as opposed to one that signifies yet another rebuild, right? So Lonzo Ball being healthy gives you light for next year. Kobe White stepping into that point guard role, being one of the best shooters in the league over the past month or so, gives you a lot of hope in the present. That's nothing I could say for the Bulls over the last few years, other than, a few sparks here or there. So good on you, Chicago. Who's next, John?
Let's go with a good team. We talk too much about bad teams. I made you talk about Pistons and the Bulls as hopeful as they may be.
Me today.
I know. Let's talk about the guy who, once you called him this, I have a hard time not calling him this and giggling about it, but we shouldn't because it's a fake name-ish. Let's talk about the fat man in Denver.
I love the fat man in Denver, okay? Because I feel like there was a very, very slight championship malaise for the Denver Nuggets. And you look up now, and they're a game and a half behind Minnesota for best record in the West. That's something they can easily make up if they actually go for it. I think they're third in point differential, right behind OKC. Minnesota far and away ahead of everybody. I think they're like 8.8 points a game better than everybody else, right? Jokic is not in front of Embiid as far as like win shares per 48, which, you guys know I really believe in as far as MVP. But he's starting to play like someone who knows he's going to be playing for the next 6 months, right? And this, in a way, is a different team. And a different team from last year. And John, in the last 20 years, can you name me how many franchises have repeated as NBA champions?
The last 20 years? So going back to 2003?
Yep.
The Miami Heat, the Los Angeles Lakers. Did the Spurs ever repeat? I feel like they didn't. Is that it? Is that the whole list?
Golden State. The Kevin Durant, Golden State Warriors.
Yeah.
Remember, guys, there was a time that repeating is just the thing that happened. You had the Lakers repeat in 87, 88, the Pistons in 89 and 90. The Bulls ran off 3 straight. Houston ran off 2 in a row with Elijah Wan. Then Mike came back and ran off another 3 straight. Shaq and Kobe Lakers, 3 straight. That was a period up until 2003 when San Antonio got their second championship after 99. Repeating was just one of those things that just happened. It never happened until 1988. The last time it happened before then was the Bill Russell Celtics when that was a much different league. Like, repeating didn't happen. Now we're in a spot where we've had 5 different champions in the last 5 years, dating back to Toronto or basically Golden State in 2018 and Toronto, the Lakers, Milwaukee, Golden State again, and then Denver last year. I would venture to say that these Denver Nuggets have the best chance of repeating than any of the previous iterations of championship teams, including the Milwaukee Bucks, who I thought had a very good chance of repeating in 2022, and they got knocked out by the Celtics in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference semifinals. And that's where I come back to Jokic. There is something to being a champion and being the best player on the championship team, and you're taking something away from the opponent the moment you walk into a building. You mentally know we're going to play 15 hard minutes. We're going to let them hang around. We're going to play for 15 hard minutes, and then we're going to take the game away from you. That's the way that you pace your body, you pace your team, so that you're not burning yourself out while everybody else is gunning for you every night. They're playing 82 playoff games. A champion can't afford to play 82 playoff games. You have to pick and choose your spots. But I do like the way that the Nuggets are starting to find out sort of the back end of rotations, how to figure out how this new iteration works. This is a different team than last year. Same Jokic, same Murray, Aaron Gordon getting bit in the face by a dog. That's a little bit different for me, y'all. I don't do dogs, all that type of stuff. But we talked about that last week with Gary Washburn. But if there is no other dominant team in the NBA this year, why not the Denver Nuggets? If all things are created equal, right? Don't you go with the team with the best player? And if the best player is still Nikola Jokic, and if the champions are still reasonably whole, and if they are healthy, and they're finding their way, now why are we not talking about them? That's redundant. That's kind of silly. But they are finding their way to get back to the top of the Western Conference, and I think we should be paying more attention to that fat man.
Speaking of that fat man, real quick.
Yeah.
Because there's the whole, hey, appreciate LeBron while he's here and all this stuff. LeBron is the personification of the phrase availability is the best ability.
Mm-hmm.
Jokic is doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he plays 70 plus games every year. He's done it every year. He's never really had a major injury. He doesn't even really have little injuries. He just misses about 10 games a year, maybe. And I feel like that's a wink nod. We're going to give you a little bit of rest before we make a stretch run into the playoffs. A team that is the opposite of this is the LA Clippers. Ooh. And I'm curious to know what your New Year's resolution would be for them.
Can I say I'm optimistic about the Clippers? Am I allowed to say such things on these here airways? Because every time I say that I am somewhat optimistic about the Clippers, they kick you in the teeth. They do it every time. They do it every goddamn time they do it, okay? But a big thing for me is where do you sit and are you top 10 in offense and top 10 in defense? Can you win a game on both sides? The Clippers are top 10 in both. There's a few other teams that are top 10 in both, but the Clippers are certainly top 10 in both right now. Kawhi Leonard missed, I think, 4 games with a hip injury. And if you've ever had like a bad hip, that ain't really nothing to mess around with. You can't really just be running out here crooked. You know what I mean? But he got himself right. And last night, the Clippers blew the doors off of the Miami Heat in the second half of that game. Miami was without Jimmy Butler, so it was a little lopsided. But Kawhi Leonard, when he plays, he's played more than half the games he's played last season. He's played 28 games already this year. He played 52 last year. He's in a contract year. The Clippers did not come to terms with a contract extension with him. I have no doubt that that's where he's going to be, especially provided that he is healthy. Here's something that stuck out to me. The Clippers' best 5-man unit. That's Kawhi, Paul George, James Harden, Ivica Zubac, and Terrence Mann, plus 17.4 points per 100 possessions. I know that's really nerdy, But basically, that is their most used lineup. That is the lineup that they play the most minutes with, and they blow the doors off of people. That means you're playing one big and you're pretty much switching everything else around on the floor. Kawhi can play against the big. Paul George can play against the big. James Harden is actually a really good post defender, which I only thought counted for so much until you start having to play James Harden positions up now at 6'5", where you might put him against another big, which means everybody has to rebound, which means you have to play faster to take advantage. And that's what they're doing. That number, that 5-man unit, it's better than OKC's most used unit. It's better than Minnesota's most used unit. It's not as good as Boston's top 5-man unit. It's not as good as Milwaukee's top 5-man unit. But think about the two teams I just mentioned. Those teams are teams that we believe have real, legit championship aspirations. And we've never taken the Clippers seriously since the day that we once did, right? As a serious championship contender. And the year that we forget about them, the year that we say forget them, is the year that they start putting things together. The year that James Harden has, the big trade fiasco, and we looked at everything that the Philadelphia 76ers have done since getting rid of him, how they've elevated, Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid, all those other guys. We haven't looked at James Harden and said, hey, James Harden is actually fitting in there. He's actually being the missing piece. And if Kawhi and PG are healthy, and if Kawhi is still the playoff terminator that he is, I tell you this, don't nobody want to see that team. If they are healthy, that's a big if. That's a big if. I'm not sure how you handle the Russell Westbrook thing. If, especially because some of the numbers aren't as kind to him as they are to other guys, but he's such an integral part of that team's morale and that team's spirit. So there's a fine line you have to balance there. And Ty Lue, for my money, is the best coach in basketball. I know there's or put it like this, Spo is the best coach in basketball. Ty Lue is literally right there with him. It's those two, and then we can discuss anybody else. But I think the Clippers, can't believe I'm saying this, Clippers, I'm not saying they're going to make it to June. I am saying I am more optimistic about the Clippers at this point than I should have ever been over the past 4 or 5 years. Than I've ever should have been over the past damn decade. Let's amend that, right? Come on now.
All right. Are we done with teams, or you want to give me one more?
You can give me one more.
I'll make it quick. This one's selfish. I made you talk about the Pistons.
Yep.
And I, a Mavericks fan, I'm going to ask you for a quick one about the Mavericks before we get out of here.
Okay, Kyrie's back, right?
Yep. Came back last night. New owner.
You hear some things about them being in the trade market. Luka looks every bit like an MVP. I like Derek Lively a lot. Can you do what you need to do when your starting center is a 19-year-old rookie? I'm always curious about if there's one position that as a young player, you're playing big time, high stakes basketball, it's going to be really difficult. It's going to be, especially in today's game where there's so much switching and you're not just guarding your position, you're having to call out everything. You're having to jump out on the perimeter a lot more. You're having to move around a lot more. You have to understand a lot of the nuances of the game. It's a lot more complicated for bigs now than probably what it was 20, 30 years ago. It's the backline position, it's center. But I like Derek Lively a lot, especially when you consider that, Luka and Kyrie ain't playing for so much defense. You know what I mean? Like the way that team is set up, it's not set up to be an entire team effort. It's set up for guys to clean up for other guys' mistakes. But I like Derek Lively a lot. I like the potential of Dallas being a playoff party crasher because you have someone like Luka who can steal you games in the playoffs. You have Kyrie, who is a big game playoff player if he's actually in the playoffs, and they have a top 10 offense. Their defense as a whole just isn't there, but they take a lot of threes. They have a great offense, and I'm very curious to see what happens with them. See, John, I can be a little, more optimistic than you think. And Kyrie, be a little more optimistic. And that's a team with Kyrie Irving.
and a 19-year-old starting center.
And a 19-year-old starting center.
Like the rest of these teams, and we talked about it with LeBron, a lot of these teams are going to look at January and in the beginning of February and go, do we need to make a move? Mavericks are one of them.
No, it's a lot of teams with the trade deadline coming up and so many teams up against the second apron and not wanting to go into repeater tax territory or stay in repeater tax territory, that teams are going to make, I won't say hard decisions. There's a team that we didn't discuss that I think will have to make some real decisions. The Golden State Warriors. I think they're going to have to make some real decisions over the next few weeks, especially if Draymond Green comes back. So I think you're right on, John, that between January and the trade deadline and All-Star break, we're going to see a lot of teams declare their intentions. See that, Monica? Declaring your intentions. That is an element that we discuss here. See? Yeah. And Monica is a listener of the good word, so she's going to hear it, and then she's going to text me tomorrow and tell me how wrong I always am. But that's all good. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is all we have for today's show. That's all we have for you on the good word. Thanks to producer John and the entire team that works behind the scenes. We guys appreciate you so much. Dan will be back with a new episode of Divine Intervention tomorrow. I will be back with another episode of The Good Word on Thursday with a guest. Happy New Year, everybody. Go Blue.